So welcome back to Managerial Accounting. The purpose of this brief little mini lecture is to review the take-home part of the exam. And there were 5 questions, each were worth 10 points. And first question is 31. And they want us to determine the cost of goods manufactured and the cost of goods sold. Now, I goofed. I should have told you folks that I expected you to show your work. I expected you to prepare schedules to support your answers. So if you didn't do that and you just jumped right to the answers, this time I accepted credit for that because I didn't emphasize that in my briefing instructions. But in the future, in order to get credit, you always have to show your work, okay? So what you wanted to do here is you wanted to get cost of goods manufactured and you want to get cost of goods sold. You draw upon the information up above. So to get the cost of goods manufactured, it would be the beginning inventory plus the material plus the labor plus the overhead gives you the total manufacturing costs incurred. Subtract out, then there's your total manufacturing costs incurred, which is the costs of the current period when added to the beginning work in process gives you the total manufacturing cost. So from that, you subtract out the ending work in process inventory. That is your cost of goods manufactured, which is 100. Then you have to get cost of goods sold. So cost of goods sold is simply beginning inventory of finished goods plus the cost of goods manufactured. Minus that gives you the goods available for sale. And you subtract out the ending cost of goods sold there. So I have a little error in my key. So let me just write this out. So 150,000 minus 23,000. So your cost of goods sold is 127,000. So here, cost of goods sold should be 127. Okay, good. Okay, so that's the first one. So to get full credit for that, you had to get the cost of goods manufactured at 125.5 and cost of goods sold at 127. And again, you should have shown all your computations. You should have shown your schedules. If you didn't and you got it right, I gave you full credit. If you didn't show your work and you didn't give me the right answers, then there's no way I could give you full credit. I had to kind of guess in terms of how close you were. Second one was pretty simple. We just wanted the journal entries there. So journal entry to record stuff purchased on account. So 500 units times 4 is 2,000. Debit materials credit accounts payable. March 15th, 250 units of raw material requisitioned at $4.50 50 a unit. So 250 times 450. That gives me 1,125. So debit work in process, credit materials. And then the 25th looks very similar. You got 215 units at $5. So 215 times 5 gives you 1,075. So get full credit here. You got to show the debit. You got to show the credit. You got to put this in general journal form. Third one had to do with equivalent. The equivalent units to be assigned costs are as follows. So they've actually made this simple for you. We actually gave you the equivalent units. And they told you that the beginning work in process was 3,500. Determine the cost of completed and transferred out of production and the ending work in process inventory. So what you needed to do here is you had to consider the beginning inventory and then the additional work that needed to be done to finish the inventory. So remember, inventories are fully complete with regard to materials, but they were not fully complete with regard to conversion costs. So you have to figure out how much costs were incurred to get the inventory ready for sale. Then you've got the started and completed this period, which was given at 52,000 units. And this was the amount that was transferred out, was 36,190. We'll get to the computations in a moment. And then you had to value the ending inventory, and that would be the total cost to be assigned. So you had 38,150, and that was completed and transferred out was 36,190, and the ending working process was 9,960. Now, how do we arrive at this? So we arrived at this by taking the beginning inventory of $3,500 And then to complete that inventory would have been another 450. Why? Because it took 3,000 units of conversion costs. 3,000, they told us that the rate for conversion costs was, let's see, the equivalent units of the equivalent unit of direct material and conversion costs. So materials are 47, conversion costs are 15 cents per equivalent units. So you know to complete the beginning inventory took an additional 3,000 equivalent units times 15, so that gives you the 450. Started and completed, they gave us at 52,000. We didn't have to compute it. And the started and completed would have recorded the materials cost of 47 and the conversion cost of 15. That's 32,240. So the amount that was actually transferred out would have been 36,190, which would have been the beginning inventory plus the cost to complete the inventory plus the units started and completed gives you 36,190. And then your ending work in process is fully complete with regard to materials, but it is not fully complete with regard to conversion costs. Okay, not complete. They told us with conversion costs that you had 2,100 units. So 2,100 units times 15. You add these two together and you get 1,960. So there's to get full credit on that, you had to show a schedule and you had to show the amount that was completed and transferred out, and you had to show the value of the ending inventory. But remember that ending, you had to consider the equivalent units and you had to consider the per unit cost of materials and the per unit cost of conversion. And you had to remember that materials were at the beginning of the process. Okay, so that's why you have no additional materials costs to complete the beginning inventory. And the materials are fully complete at the end of the period because they're ended at the beginning of the process. And then your conversion costs, they told us what the conversion costs were necessary to complete the beginning inventory, and they also told us what the equivalent units were for conversion costs in the ending inventory. Okay, so to get full credit there, you had to show your computations, and you should have come up with the amount that was completed and transferred out was 36,190, and the ending inventory is 1,960. Next one, give us a bunch of information. They told us what the budget overhead. They says determine the amount of factory overhead to be allocated to each unit using activity-based costing, round to the nearest dollar. Company plans to produce 60,000 handbags and 40,000 moccasins. So once you get done with all the costs, you're going to divide by 60,000 for the handbags, and you're going to divide by 40,000 for the moccasins. So how do we get those? Well, for the handbags, as far as the cutting department is concerned, you got $40,000 worth of costs, okay, and that's allocated on the basis of direct labor hours. So 40,000 divided by 100,000, that would give you your rate. And handbags required, or estimate there is 60,000 direct labor hours. So 60,000 times 40 divided by 100,000 gives you 24,000. Sewing, you had total cost of 210 divided by 140. And in the sewing department, you had 60,000 direct labor hours there. So 60,000. And then setups, you had $80,000 worth of setup cost, 80,000 divided by 800 setups, multiplied by the 500 for the handbags. So there's 800, that number divided by 500 gives you 50,000. Inspections, you had 20,000 worth of inspections, and you had 1,000 inspections, and you had 200 that were allocable to the handbags, so 200 that gives you 4,000. And purchase orders, you had 100,000 divided by 400, multiplied by 100, gives you the 2,500. So there is your total allocation of factory overhead to handbags is 170,500 divided by 60,000, so you get 284 a unit. And moccasins, again, you're using the same ratios, but you've got different usage there. So here it is 40,000 is direct labor hours for moccasins. And for direct labor hours for sewing, you ended up with 80,000 as opposed to 60, gives you 120. Setups, you had 300 setups, so 300 setups. Okay. And quality inspections that you had for moccasins were 800. And purchase orders for moccasins were actually 300. So there is your total cost allocable amongst 40,000 units. So you get $4.74. Errors that were made on this one, quite often the errors that were made were simply math errors. So maybe you recorded 90,000 as like 900 or something like that, or 9,000. So some of you got to watch your calculations with decimal points. Some of you have a tendency to not to lose track of the decimal point. So check the numbers if the numbers look very different. So if the numbers look very different, say from moccasins compared to handbags, take a look at the actual decimal. You may have the decimal point in the wrong place. Okay, so here's how you do that. And again, if you jumped right to the factory overhead to handbags of 284 and moccasins of 474, I accepted it, but I will not accept it in the future. You've got to show there are detailed calculations involved here, which you've got to show in the future. Okay, the last one here, this was an example of activity-based costing system for a service organization. So they give us these activity rates, and they give us these, says the uses activity-based costing to determine the cost of services. The salon determine the cost of services by activity and activity usage. So to do a highlight involves 3 washings, 4 conditionings, 2 chemical treatments, and 1 styling. So you have to go and you have to multiply. Here's the activity rate. So it's for the for a highlight, it requires 3 hair washings at $4. It requires 4 conditionings at $3.50. It requires 2 chemical treatments at $25, and it requires 1 styling at $10. So you multiply those all out, and you get the cost of a highlight turns out to be $86. Again, if you just jumped 86, I took it this time, but in the future I will not, and you must show your work. Okay, so that's it. I hope you found that brief review useful. If anything else is still unclear, talk to me either before or after the next class. So until next time, adios, au revoir, hasta luego. Look forward to finishing up the next chapter 5 with you on Thursday. Be well, everybody. Bye-bye.